There are some pretty magical places in the world that I've travelled to and lived in, all over the world. But one of those places that I've lived in and had experiences in that I can say for a fact that draws me back to one place that I really feel drawn back to, I should say, more than any of the other places that I've been to in the last 25 years, is Byron Bay, the Byron Bay Shire and the Byron Bay region. I've got a couple of really close friends who live over there still in the Byron Bay region, and a couple of friends who live in the Gold Coast, and a lot of my family, on my sister's family, her children all live in the Gold Coast, sort of Northern Rivers sort of region of the Byron Bay, sort of slash Southern Queensland, Northern New South Wales region. But in 2020, when the World Health Crisis kicked off and we began this descent into fascism in the global sense, I had this really strong draw at the middle of that year to move back to the Byron Bay region, the Shire region, the Byron Bay region. And for me, I only really got to a place where I understood the nature of Byron Bay and what it meant to me in regards to how much of my conscious awakening experience was influenced by being there in 1997 when I travelled from Melbourne up to Byron Bay. From various people that I've met travelling around New Zealand in the early 90s who told me about the Byron Bay region and the Byron Bay Shire and the region of the Northern Rivers region of the New South Wales area. And I understood that by being in that part of the world, there was something very special about this region. Very special. Excuse me. But it wouldn't be until early July 1997 that I really understood what that region was about, what energy was there. I became a devotee of Sri Sathya Sai Baba. I was living in Nelson in the early 90s. I was drawn to images of him. There were books around about him everywhere I went, at people's houses. I was just drawn to the idea of this guru in India, and I was drawn to the energy that I felt when I looked at pictures of him. And I began to research about him. I began to know more about him. I began to not pray to him, but I began to send my intentions to him in the sense of like if I had an intention that I wanted to see manifest in my life, I would include Baba in my prayers or my intentions and say, listen, I want to have this experience, I want to have that experience. And often that experience would manifest in my life in a way that I would never see coming. And it was quite an unusual experience to have this, where I would put my intentions out there and that intention would manifest in a way that I would not see coming, but it would manifest in a way that was meant for me at the right time, at the right place. When I got to Byron Bay in July, the winter of '97, I was staying in a backpackers, and it was very quiet. Byron Bay region in winter was just dead quiet. There was no one really around. But I met a bunch of people in the backpackers I was staying at, and one of them was a girl from Sri Lanka. Was she from Sri Lanka or India? I'm pretty sure she's from Sri Lanka. Anyway, I can't remember where she's from. She's from somewhere in the southeastern Indian region, the subcontinent. And she was a devotee of Sai Baba. And she was telling me all about her experiences with Baba. And she said to me, listen, you really should write a letter to him. You know, that's the way here you can correspond with him. He won't read the letter, he'll pick it up and hold it in his hand and be able to know what you've written in the letter. And then he'll be able to put you in his intentions will be able to flow into your life, and that way there you'll have all your needs met in the way that are best for you, in a way that he will come to meet you in a place where you can have the experiences that you need at the right place at the right time. Much more of it was basically the same experiences what I've been having was in Nelson region. I was a devotee of Baba at the time. So it'd be a continuation of those experiences that I was having at the time when I was living in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So I wrote a letter in July '97. I don't actually remember what the letter said, but it was something along the lines of, I fell into the experience of writing it was basically saying thank you for all that you've given me in the last year or two of my life, and where you've brought me to now, the people that you've brought into my life. Please may it continue. I came back to the Byron Bay Shire after moving up to Port Douglas, living in Port Douglas region for about 4.5, 5 months. And I travelled slowly down the east coast with some friends I'd met in Port Douglas, and we travelled down to Byron Bay, and I got to Byron Bay back there. I got back there in November 1997. 97, yes, 97. And when I got back there, I stayed there for about almost 10 weeks, 8 weeks, close to 10 weeks. I came back to Sydney just before Christmas. Now, when I was in Byron, I had an experience that changed my life forever in a way that made me realise just how far I had to go on my conscious awakening experience, and how multifaceted that conscious awakening experience was. I met a girl called Kirsten, an English rose, beautiful woman called Kirsten, and Kirsten and I became lovers. And one day I was walking through the Byron Bay region, through the township, and I saw an old friend of mine, Erin, who I hadn't seen since I was living in Port Douglas. And I said to Erin, come for a walk, let's go up to the lighthouse, which is the most easterly point of Australia, or maybe in the region. We went to the lighthouse, and we're up there walking up to the lighthouse, and then we walked back again. And we could see a storm kind of brewing on the horizon, moving towards us. I remember looking at the storm going like, wow, that's amazing. I said, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we could take some acid and watch that storm roll in from the east coast? And Aaron looked at me and said, I've got some. I said, let's do it. So we went back to his van, came back up to the lighthouse. I said, look, let's stay here up here tonight. Let's find somewhere we can crash tonight and lie on the grass and watch the storm roll in. So when we got up there, me, Kirsten, and Aaron. Kirsten came too, but didn't take any acid. It was just me and Aaron that took the acid. We got up there and it was bloody howling. Like the wind was literally howling, really strong, and it was just uncomfortable to be around anywhere. We couldn't find anywhere we could lie down without being bombarded by the wind blowing over us very noisily, and also blowing our blankets, our duvets off us, our doonas. We call doonas in Australia, we call them duvets everywhere else. Duvets off us. And I walked around. I remember seeing this park bench seat. I walked over to the park bench seat, and I sat on the park bench seat. Some of my feet were dangling over the edge of the seat, but they weren't touching the ground. Like there was the seat, and then there was an earthen shelf leading down to an area that was kind of almost dug out beneath my feet, where my feet were hanging over. So I lay down my blankets over the area beneath the seat. I lay down on the ground below the seat. When I laid down there, it was quiet. The wind was passing over the mound above, in front of where the seat was passing over the mound, lifting up, hitting the seat, missing me completely. So I got Aaron and Kirsten to come over where I was, and we all lay down, put our blankets down, cuddled up, lay on the ground, took our acid, meaning Aaron did anyway, and we lay there and watching these clouds. There was no rain, it was just a storm. It was like a heavy storm coming in, dark clouds, broiling, rolling at incredible speed over the horizon, and from the horizon towards the Byron Bay Shire, and going inland from the east. When this storm was continuing to blow over us for a short duration of time, I began to feel sleepy on acid. Yeah, I went to sleep on acid. It was the first and the only time this has ever happened in my life. I went to sleep. I was subdued to a place where I was so relaxed I went to sleep. I remember going to sleep and then waking up tripping. And the clouds are gone and the stars, like a river, moving across the sky above me, like literally moving. I was just like, wow, this is really good acid. And then I heard a voice. I heard a man's voice. And the man's voice said, you must go to Ram's place. And I was, what? And when I heard that voice, I thought it must have been Aaron. I sat up, Kirsten was next to me, and Aaron was on the other side of me. I sat up and went, Aaron, what did you say? He was asleep. So I woke him up, and he's like, I didn't say anything. I was like, what the fuck? Now, Ram was this cat called Ram Adamides that I met in Port Douglas working on the Thin Red Line as an extra. Ram was like on another level, resonating on a level of frequency band that I was nowhere near. He was so conscious, so spiritually awakened. He was on a level that I just was nowhere near at that time. I loved this guy. He was so cool. And Ram lived in the area. Now, before I left Port Douglas, I had a little notebook which I took everyone who I met working on the film and people I'd met in Port Douglas that were travelling. I took all their names and all their addresses and their phone numbers and their email addresses. So if I was travelling in the area where they lived or where they were living at some point, I could get hold of them and catch up with them for a beer or for a coffee or for a walk or go to a club or whatever, to a festival, just to keep in touch. Now, Ram's address was in there, and I knew he lived in the Byron Bay Shire region, but I didn't know exactly where it was. So about 5 a.m. when we got up, went down to the Tea Tree Lakes, which is in the northern end of the out of the Byron Bay township up the road. Went to the Tea Tree Lakes for a swim to cleanse ourselves and cleanse our auras of our nightly excursions. We're swimming in the Tea Tree Lakes. I said to Aaron, we've got to go back to a phone box. I've got to call Ram up. He's like, what? Okay, sure. So I go back to a phone box in the Byron Bay Shire, and it's like 5:36 in the morning. I call up Ram. I call him up on this phone box, and in this phone box, I say, hey, listen, Ram's far. Can me and a couple of friends come and stay with you for a few days? Is that all right? So he said, let me ask my mother, because he's living with his mum, you see, where he was in Merlewimba. So he asks his mother. I was like, this is crazy. What the fuck am I doing? This is 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm asking this cat on the whim of a voice that told me I must go to Ram's place. I'm calling this cat up at 6 in the morning. Been tripping all night, and this is just fucking bizarre. What am I doing? But I knew I had to do it. I had this feeling I had to do this. So I did. So I called him up and I asked him if he'd come and stay at his place. He said, yeah, no worries. Mum says it's fine. Come on up. And I was like, holy shit. So I gave the phone to Aaron, and Aaron took directions, because I was like, he knew the area better than I did. So Aaron took directions and drew a little map. Now Aaron had this Ford Escort panel van, a small kind of like station wagon kind of panel van, like ones that you find in Australia and New Zealand at some point, in the 70s and the early 80s. With a sunroof in the back of the panel van, and 2 seats in the front and a bed in the back where you could sleep. So we all packed up our stuff out of the backpackers, me and Kirsten that is, packed up our stuff out of the backpackers, said we'd be back in a couple of days. We hopped into Aaron's van. I was lying in the back of the van in the bed while Kirsten and Aaron were in the front passenger seats driving towards our destination. Now I couldn't see anything other than looking out the back windows and out of the sunroof the whole time. So I was looking at the back on the road where we had been, and they were looking where we were going. And I remember lying in the back of the panel van, and I remember that we started to go on a gradient, started going up and up and up. I was like, where the fuck are we going? And they were going like, holy shit, holy shit, holy shit, the whole way. I was like, what are you looking at? I couldn't see anything, right? I was looking out the back and out for the sunroof, and all I could see was tree canopies and trees over the top of the van, and the road going behind us, going down, sloping downwards, but we were going up. And eventually we stopped, and I heard Aaron go, oh my God, and Kirsten's like, holy shit. I was like, let me out of the van. So they let me out of the van. I got out of the van, and where we had stopped on the top of a volcanic plug. Now, Wollumban Crater, the crater where the volcano used to be, which is now where we have this, what's called Mount Warning, which is a volcanic plug, which is when the volcano itself exploded out of the earth and completely destroyed itself. Lava came up like so. and then solidified and stopped and became like this in the middle of the Wallenman crater is what they call Mount Warning, which is one of these volcanic plugs, which has just stopped a big hill in the middle of this gigantic crater. Well, to the southeast of that is a number of smaller volcanic plugs, and this house, this hexagonal shaped house, 2-story house with a portico and a Balinese garden going down into the jungle, was perched down below us where we'd parked the van. I got out of the van and went, oh my fucking god, who the fuck brought us here? Where the fuck is this place? Holy shit. I get down the stairs to his house, see Ram, give him a hug, I meet his mother, and there's this other cat there, an Italian cat, who happens to be the father of a friend of mine, Marco, who worked in a restaurant in Port Douglas, who was a lovely fucking guy. Marco was such a cool dude, and this was his father. The ties that bind. And this cat always wore white. Marco's father always wore white, had long grey hair with dark black streaks through his hair, had a leopard skin tie around his head with feathers in the side, and looked more Native American to me than he did Italian. He was a character, man. And I remember walking into the building of his house, looking into this house thinking, who the fuck brought me here? Who was that voice? I kid you not, I stopped, I turned around. Everywhere around that first floor of that building were photographs and paintings and images of Sri Sathya Sai Baba. So Sai Baba had brought me to this destination, had brought me here, to this house. And I was like, oh my god, I am a devotee. Here is the being that has brought me here to this place. Now, coming to this place, to Ram's place, and spending time with Ram and his mother and their friend was such a phenomenal and instrumental experience for me, and it was so poignant because it changed my entire perception of my sexuality in a way that I've forever embraced and understood through the years, and up to the point now where I see it as being a foundation of my experience, my intimate experiences, and in my own self-esteem and my own level of self-love. Kirsten and I we hooked up maybe for about a week when this experience happened. And we got to Ram's place that night, an open building, second floor story with walls partitioned by sarongs, literally sarongs, with no real walls. Kirsten and I had an intimate sexual experience, shall we say, and it wasn't exactly quiet. And the next morning, Ram's mother pulled me in the portico. We went out for breakfast. Ram's mother asked if she could have a word to me, and I thought, oh my god, we're going to get asked to leave. We were quite noisy last night, and that's understandable. It's an open plan building, and we were respectful in regards to the nature of our connection. We could have been a bit more quiet, we could have been a bit more subtle in our desire to have sex with each other and done it a bit more quietly. But what happened was she pulled me aside and she sat me down. And Ram and Kirsten and Erin were talking somewhere else. They were in another part of the house. I sat down, and the Italian cat who was there with Ram's mother was rolling this enormous joint about that long. And he quietly just handed it to me. And I was just like, oh, sure, you want me to light that up for you? So at the time I was smoking weed, so I lit this joint up and I went to pass it back to them. I'm like, no, it's just for you. This is like, what the fuck? This huge fucking hooter. So I was sitting there smoking this joint, getting myself completely blown out. Stoned. After 2 puffs, I was sideways. Anyway, Ram's mother, who's a psychologist and a sex therapist, said to me, do you understand what you are doing? And I said to her, I don't follow. Where are you going with this? What are you talking about? I'm sorry, I don't follow. And then she said to me, do you understand what you're doing when you're having sex? I was just like, oh, come on, I'm 25 years old, man. I'm not a kid. Of course I understand what I'm doing when I'm having sex. It's pretty simple. The experience is da-da-da-da-da. She's like, no. Okay, let me explain something to you. This at the time, when I was smoking this joint, was the impact of what she told me was so massive for me at the time. And it didn't take much for me for this information to sink into a place where I really understood where she came from, where she's coming from. Because it was like, for me, I knew this information, but it was like the way that she presented it to me, it reaffirmed to me the fact that what she was coming from did not only make sense, it was an elemental truth that I needed to abide by if I chose to move forward in my conscious spiritual development. So she told me that a woman's power is in her womb. A woman carries a child in that womb for 9 months. It grows inside of her. She has this elemental power beyond men's wildest imagination. And that elemental power and that sacred space, that sacred site on her body, her womb, is that, a temple. And to enter into that temple without reverence, love, passion, and reverence, if I said that as well, respect is a violation of her sacred space. It's a violation of her temple space. And here I am smoking this enormous joint, getting completely blown out, hearing this information, and just like my jaw is dropping with every word she's saying. I'm like, oh my fucking God, she's blowing my mind more than this joint is. And he's sitting there nodding, looking at me, like just sitting there staring at me, not in a malicious way, but in a way like, do you get it? Do you understand? Do you understand? I was just like, this is changing my whole perspective of my sexuality in a way that I'm not going to be able to walk away from and go, oh yeah, whatever. No. This is changing me in a way. And Sai Baba had brought me here to this destination. His devotee sitting across from me, and she was telling me about the nature of sexuality and where I needed to move into in regards to my own conscious spiritual development if I was going to move forward in my development and in my resonance, in my vibrational matrix and frequency, if I was to reframe my experience of sexuality in a way that was going to uplift me and connect me to my partners, connect me in a way that was deeply formative for that connection to grow, and for me to grow, and for me to understand, have that reverence. And I was sitting there going, oh my fucking God, do I even love Kirsten? Do I even love this woman I'm with? I can tell you this, I told her what she told me, and Kirsten's like, what? She didn't get it at the time. She understood, but she was like, we're just traveling, we're just having fun. It's just fun, we're having fun, just enjoy it for what it is. Don't put labels on it. And she had a point. But at the same time, for me, it changed me. It changed me in a way that, looking back at it now, was probably the most formative experience of my sexual life. It changed me forever. And I pulled back from Kirsten in a sexual way the next night. And I held her in my arms and told her that I wasn't sure that I loved her, but I was stoned as fuck the whole day. But I told her I wasn't sure if I loved her. But over the next couple of days while we're hanging out with Ram and being in the hinterland, he took us around and showed us some of the most amazing places in the jungle. Whew, I really began to love Kirsten. My heart opened in a way that it hadn't opened towards somebody for a long time. I remember one formative moment. I crawled along a branch of a tree as Kirsten was floating below me in a river on her back, topless. I crawled on this branch with a camera, and I said, Kirsten, I'm up here taking pictures, is it okay? And she's like, of course. I was lying on this branch, looking down at her and thinking that this Italian cat who was there with us was very psychic. And he said to me, pointed at me after smoking this joint, said to me, you used to be a Buddhist monk in your last lifetime. And he was right. And he said that she was a dancer, Kirsten was a dancer in her last lifetime. And he told Kirsten this, and Kirsten embraced that, and she became the dancer while she was there at Brown's Post, and she became to me, when I watched her dance, I saw something in her elemental and beautiful and sensual and sexual beyond my wildest erotic fantasies. That reverence that I felt for her developed and grew in those 3 days, and I truly opened my heart up to her in a way that I hadn't for a long time. It being who I was, and feeling unsafe in that connection, feeling unsafe to give myself in a way that I felt like I was going to be abandoned or rejected at some point. I couldn't follow through in a way that I really wanted to. I would have, if I had known what I knew now, then. But I remember crawling on this branch with this camera, looking over at the water, at Kirsten lying on her back in the water, and taking pictures of her in this jungle, and her lying in this, floating on the stream, and thinking to myself, she's a fucking goddess. She is so unbelievably hot, and so incredibly sensual. How blessed am I to have this being as my intimate partner. I loved her. I loved her with every fibre of my being. I was so grateful, so reverent, so respectful. And whenever I had sex with her, it was always incredible with Kirsten sexually. The connection was off the charts. I gave everything I possibly could. She was crazy, wild, and fun. I loved her for it. I loved her for it. And this experience in Byron Bay with Baba in the Byron region was incredible for me. And the Byron Shire also brought into my life other experiences, other people as well that came into my life. Daniela, one of my partners I met there at the same backpack as I was staying there, became very good friends with me and became lovers as well for a duration of my life, and we are still friends. We're still friends. But the people that came into my life, the experiences they had in Byron Bay, Michelle Davis, another one as well, a person that I met there that I was enamored with, who I felt a deep connection with. Incredible. Incredible place, incredible energy. I was told once by a First Nations, a First Peoples, an Aboriginal man told me once that the Byron Bay Shire region is a place where you come to meet people, to connect, to share, to evolve and to move through experiences, to have ritual and ceremony, but never to stay for a long time, never a place to stay. You come, you have interactions, you get what you need from the experiences that you have in this region, and then you move on. You can always come back. You can always come back. And that's stuck with me. You know, the idea of moving back there again, to live there again, has been like, well, if I move back there to live there, would it change the energy that I would feel if I was there just for a short time again? I don't know. Has that changed for me? I don't know. I really have no idea. But to go back there again for me would be, at least I know for one thing, enlivening, because the place, Byron Bay region, had brought into my life a very special number of individuals. They brought me together a number of experiences that were life-changing in so many ways. It evolved my consciousness in a way that nowhere I can think of really, like right now, like I can think of in the world has ever changed me or shifted me in a way like that before. Nowhere. And the hinterland, the jungle, just off the charts. So incredible. The people, amazing. The energy, unique, powerful. And Baba remained in my life, and I also feel as though Baba saved my life. In Western Australia, when I had a car accident with some friends travelling towards Broome on a surf trip, near Jakes Point, just north of Jakes Point, on the west coast of Australia, I was in a car accident where the Toyota Hilux that I was in with two Cornish friends, an Australian and a Canadian, all good friends of mine. We were in a car accident. The vehicle rolled 3 times and landed on my side. And when this happened, some being came through the windscreen on my side and put his arms around me and held me to protect me from the impact of the car as it rolled. And the being that I saw that came through the window was an afro and an Indian man in an orange robe. It was Sai Baba, who came through the window as the impact of the car crashed, and the impact of the vehicle as it rolled. It held me, protected me from any injury as the car rolled 3 times and landed on my outside, and I was unscathed. I got out of that vehicle, but all of us in that vehicle should have died. It should have been the end of us, all of us. We all survived, basically unscathed. Incredible experience. Terrifying, but at the same time exhilarating. To know that that wasn't us, that wasn't the end of us. We keep living. And my connection to Baba began to dissolve after that. I felt like he had been in my life for a short time, like I'd been in a relationship with this being. And he had been really pronounced and really been very prominent in my life in the Byron Bay region. He'd come into my life then to help me move through that phase of my sexuality. He'd been instrumental in my sexuality, in my expression of my sexuality, and my understanding of sexuality. And that was his place in my life. That's why he'd come into my life, put me into that next level of understanding. That was the Byron Bay Shire region. That brought me to that place of deeper understanding with the souls incarnate that I met there and the wonderful experiences that I had over that short duration of me being there for no more than 10 weeks. Thanks for watching, I truly appreciate it. Mā te wā. I'll see you again soon.